Good morning, friends. One of the important judgments from Calcutta High Court. We have seen in the trade since GST got introduced on July 1, 2017, the supplier has made the mistake while filing his GSTR-1. So some of the transaction which was B2B supply, registered supplier to registered recipient, wrongly furnished as a B2C. So registered supplier and shown as to unregistered recipient or buyer. Thereby, the credit was not reflecting in GSTR-2A of the buyer or recipient. Buyer and recipient denied the payment tax component because that credit was not reflecting in GSTR-2A and wanted supplier to amend his GSTR-1. So fact of the case, for the relevant month, November 2018 and August 2019, the supplier has wrongly furnished certain B2B supply as a B2C supply. So it was not reflecting in GSTR-2A of the recipient or buyer. So recipient has withheld the amount tax component and wanted supplier to amend his GSTR-1. By the time period as prescribed for any rectification of any omission or error in GSTR-1, which is normally September of next financial year, following the end of relevant financial year as per section 37 for the impugned time period, which is as per recent provision Finance Act 2022 is 30th November of next financial year following the end of relevant financial year. So that time period was gone. So he filed the representation to Jurisdictional Assistant Commissioner SGST Department for amending his GSTR-1, and department did not reply anything. And this writ petition was filed before Honorable Calcutta High Court in the case of T.M.C. High Tech. Honorable Calcutta High Court has allowed that the representation which was filed by the petitioner must be heard and region order must be passed by the concerned AC SGST department within 60 days. Now we have to understand this problem is not only with this petitioner. This problem is with so many other suppliers who has made the mistake. And quite obvious, you'd be knowing that for the past period which we are referring to, lot of supplier has made the mistake. They have wrongly furnished B2B supply as a B2C. And they have paid the taxes through GSTR-3B. There is no denial. But since they have made the mistake, this credit is not reflected in GSTR-2A of the recipient buyer, and buyer has denied the payment to the supplier because credit is not reflected in a GSTR-2A. What to be done? हमने देखा है ये problem quite obvious is there. So what to be done? That is the main important aspect which we are discussing. So first point, can GSTR-1 be amended beyond the statutory time period as prescribed? First, if he is allowed to amend GSTR-1, then quite obvious credit is going to be reflected in GSTR-2A of the recipient or buyer. Second, credit which is not reflected in GSTR-2A can be disputed by the department prior to 1st January 2022. These two questions are very important. Let me analyze these two pointers first. If supplier has wrongly furnished B2B supply as a B2C, quite obvious, it is not going to be auto-populated in GSTR-2A of the recipient or buyer, quite obvious. But we have to understand, in this given transaction, there was only mistake in GSTR-1. B2B shown as a B2C, but taxes are being paid. So in terms of tax collection by the department, it is being done. Tax is being deposited to the government. It is only wrongly furnishing B2B as a B2C. Now, in a given situation, what is the loss to the government? Loss to the government exchequer. To my mind, there is no loss to the government exchequer. It's a revenue neutral transaction. So in such a given situation, when taxes are being paid to the government and taxes are collected by the government, only this transaction need to be corrected in GSTR-1. Only question lies whether it is permissible beyond statutory time period. This matter was also argued in another case, Mahalakshmi Infra Contracts Limited, before Honorable Jharkhand High Court. And Honorable Jharkhand High Court has allowed that GSTR-1 can be amended even beyond the statutory time period because it's a revenue neutral transaction. Taxes are being paid to the government. Government has collected the tax. By correcting this transaction, credit is available to the buyer, to the recipient, because then GSTR-2A will show this particular amount. So to my mind, प्रॉब्लम कहाँ है? B2B को मैंने B2C दिखा दिया, टैक्स तो मैंने जमा किया है ना, पे किया है ना. अगर आप मुझे GSTR-1 अमेंड करने का मौका दे देते हैं तो बायर के 2A में आ जाएगा और बायर को क्रेडिट मिल जाएगी. टैक्स तो मैंने जमा किया ही किया है. सो वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द प्रोसीजरल इनकन्वीनियंस. विद इन स्टैट्यूटरी टाइम पीरियड वो नहीं कर पाया. क्यों नहीं कर पाया, इसकी वजह भी हमें समझनी पड़ेगी. बिकॉज ऑटोमेटेड जीएसटी रिटर्न सिस्टम विच वी envisage, we never implemented. What we envisage, supplier going to file GSTR-1, going to be auto-populated in GSTR-2A for the recipient. Recipient can add, modify and delete while filing GSTR-2. And once recipient is doing add, modify and delete, it is going to be auto-populated for the supplier in GSTR-1A, which is either going to be accepted or rejected by the supplier, and then GSTR-3. This automated GST return system was never implemented. GSTR-2 and GSTR-3 kept in abeyance. So had it been known to the supplier that he has made the mistake, quite obvious he could have corrected his mistake within the time period. Since there was no GSTR-2A until January 2019, and even thereafter it was improving in a phased manner. So why we should create a bottleneck when taxes are being paid? It's a revenue neutral transaction. He should be allowed. Laudable judgment by Honorable Jharkhand High Court, and even Calcutta High Court has taken cognizance of same and asked the jurisdictional AC SGST to decide on the representation filed by the petitioner for amending a GSTR-1. होना भी चाहिए, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? टैक्सेस पेड हुए हैं. GSTR-1 अमेंड करने से जो उसने B2C गलत दिखा दिया, जो B2B थी, तो GSTR-2A of the recipient आ जाएगा. Quite obvious, should be doable one. But just to alarm you, Honorable Telangana High Court in the case of Yokohama India Limited has given contrary judgment. They said beyond statutory period you can't rectify, can't amend your GSTR-1. If it is being allowed beyond statutory time period, then it is going to affect obligation and liabilities of other stakeholders. My only submission, with all due regards to Telangana High Court, my lord, we have paid the liability. Government has collected the tax. It was only wrongly furnishing. B2B wrongly furnished as a B2C. So that is not going to affect anything. Taxes are being collected by the government. Now in a given situation, only one submission. why department is objecting and sending notices to the buyer, to the recipient, that this transaction is not reflected in GSTR-2A? Can you really say that that credit must be reflected in GSTR-2A and credit would be denied? Because wrong furnishing by the supplier B2B shown as a B2C, not coming in GSTR-2A. Honorable Supreme Court judgment Bharti Airtel, which was considered by Honorable Telangana High Court in the case of Yokohama, it is clearly said GSTR-2A is only a facilitation. That cannot object, that cannot create bottleneck, and that cannot be a basis for denial of credit for the recipient or buyer. Yes, from 1st January 2022, the fifth condition which got inserted under section 16 subsection 2 is important, that credit must match with GSTR 2B, not 2A. So prior to 1st January 2022, so many notices for denying the credit as it is not reflected in GSTR 2A has got no basis. So even though आप मुझे GSTR-1 amend नहीं करने देते after the statutory time period, but you should not object that credit would be denied because it is not reflected in GSTR-2A. There is no legal backing. Even Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Bharti Airtel has said GSTR-2A is only a facilitation. So having said that, different judgment coming from different high court whether GSTR-1 can be amended beyond the statutory time period, as considered by Honorable Jharkhand High Court, is a revenue neutral transaction. So GSTR-1 should be allowed to be amended. Automated GST return system was never implemented. So there's doctrine of impossibility. This supplier could have amended and rectified his GSTR-1 had there been the automated GST return system, section 37, 38, 39, 42, 43. GSTR-2 and 3 never got implemented. 2A came only from January 2019. So there are reasonable cause and reason that the supplier was not knowing that he has made the mistake. He should be allowed. And these are the reasons we are citing. And even department issuing notices for denying of credit, denial of credit, because not reflected in GSTR-2A, it's out of the context. It should not be disputed and litigated, because GSTR-2A is only facilitation as stated by Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Bharti Airtel. So my submission, अगर मैंने B2B supply B2C दिखा दिया अपने GSTR-1 में, ऑफ कोर्स मेरे बायर के 2A में नहीं दिखेगा, पर टैक्स जमा हुआ है गवर्नमेंट को. अगर ऑटोमेटेड जीएसटी रिटर्न सिस्टम अगर गवर्नमेंट ने इंप्लीमेंट कर दिया होता तो सप्लायर को मालूम पड़ गया होता कि उसने मिस्टेक की है और वो अमेंड कर देता विद इन द टाइम पीरियड, रेक्टिफाई कर देता. चूंकि ऑटोमेटेड जीएसटी रिटर्न सिस्टम इंप्लीमेंट ही नहीं हुआ, डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ इम्पॉसिबिलिटी, आप क्यों अलाउ नहीं कर रहे? इट शुड बी अलाउड, इन जनरल इट शुड बी अलाउड. अगर आप अलाउ नहीं भी करें तो भी मैं आपसे यह कहता हूं कि जीएसटीआर 2A के बेसिस पे क्या आप क्रेडिट डिनाई कर सकते हैं? नहीं कर सकते. प्रायर टू 1 जनवरी 2022 जितनी भी नोटिस डिपार्टमेंट आज भेज रहा है कि 2A में आपकी क्रेडिट नहीं आ रही, बायर की क्रेडिट नहीं आ रही, आप डिनाई नहीं कर सकते. फॉर द सिंपल रीजन, ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट इन द केस ऑफ भारती एयरटेल में उन्होंने कहा 2A इज ओनली फैसिलिटेशन. हाँ, पांचवी कंडीशन जो सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2 ऑफ CGST एक्ट में डाली गई कि अब क्रेडिट आपके GSTR 2B से मैच होनी चाहिए. सो 5 कंडीशन जो हो गई कि एज ए बायर आपके पास टैक्स इनवॉइस की कॉपी होनी चाहिए, रिसीट ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, आपके सप्लायर ने टैक्स का पेमेंट कर दिया हो, बीइंग रिसिपिएंट आप अपना रेगुलरली जीएसटी रिटर्न भर रहे हो, और पांचवी कंडीशन कि आपकी 2B से मैच करनी चाहिए. ये एप्लीकेबल हुआ 1 जनवरी 2022 से. So prior to that आप ये डिस्प्यूट नहीं कर सकते कि 2A में नहीं आ रहा तो आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगी, बायर को क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगी. ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट कहता है. So my humble submission that for all such mistake which is revenue neutral transaction, taxes are being paid to the government exchequer, and being doctrine of impossibility, आपने automated GST return system implement ही नहीं किया, तो या तो आप GSTR-1 को amend करने का मौका दीजिए, या फिर आप जो नोटिसेस भेज रहे हैं कि क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगी बिकॉज 2A में नहीं आ रहा, इस सर्कुलर के प्रायर टू 1 जनवरी 2022 हम इसको डिस्प्यूट नहीं करेंगे. अगर 2A में नहीं भी आ रहा फिर भी आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगी. देयर हैज टू बी क्लैरिटी इन दिस रिगार्ड. दैट वुड बी माय सबमिशन. सो दिस इज द जजमेंट फ्रॉम Calcutta High Court, T.M.C High Tech, and you can also follow the Jharkhand High Court judgment Mahalakshmi Infra Contract Private Limited, and the distinguished judgment from Telangana High Court, Yokohama, India Limited. And you can look at the Bharati Airtel Honorable Supreme Court judgment as well for this analysis, whether GSTR-1 can be amended beyond statutory time period, or whether credit can be denied because it is not reflected in GSTR-2A of the buyer and recipient. I tried my best to explain this transaction to all of you. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.